Good evening. Welcome to this community page called Live on Purpose. I'm Patty Baker, and I'm a pastor. I'm not about building four walls of a brick building called a church, but rather I'm all about building a fire in the hearts of people who will have a passion to seek truth, to seek the creator of the universe, and to develop a spiritual connection with our creator and with others, and also just to have a connection within ourselves, that we know who we are and why we're here, and that there is a life beyond this one. So just a quick shout out to say good evening. I was supposed to be out here last week. As you know, I'm out here every week, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. However, my mother was here last week visiting. She flew in a week ago this evening. And so I completely forgot to just stop what I was doing. We were in the middle of dinner at 8 p.m. Eastern. And but I was just so present in the moment with her that I didn't stop to come in and do this message. And God has since downloaded additional content and has provided me with an experience to share tonight with this message that I had planned on giving to you last week, but didn't because of my utter forgetfulness, which I make no apology for, since I was so enthralled with being in the presence of my mom. So we are studying the book of Acts, just so you know, and it's the start of the first church and what that looked like and how we can broaden our spiritual journey through the spiritual practices that Jesus taught and through our lives. That's the acts, the things that the people were doing at the time who were following Jesus, what they did after he died and after he had ascended into the kingdom of heaven. So my hope is that you will not just have a history lesson here, but that you will have more than just intellectual purposes only. That this would be a heart transplant for you. This is a little bit of a Patty Baker pop-up party because I'm just kind of coming in from this evening. So I appreciate your patience as I give you a quick recap of where we've been in the book of Acts. We're in Acts chapter 1, and if you've missed the last few weeks, you can dive right in, where we are, pick up where we left off. You're not behind or anything like that. God's called you to be right here, right now, and this message is for you. God will filter it through your ears, and I pray that you'll hear it with your spirit. Acts begins where Jesus commands the disciples not to leave Jerusalem, but to wait for the promise of God, which is the Holy Spirit. And Jesus told him, you ain't going to have to wait too long, right? It's just not too many days from now, he said in Acts 1:4. And then I skip down to Acts 1:8, where he says, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. So Jesus outlines the commission that he's has for them. And then after he said this, he was taken up before their eyes, and a cloud hid him from their sight. And we talked a little bit about that cloud and how that resembled the glory of God as it did in the Old Testament when the Israelites were going through the desert, following the cloud by day and the fire by night, right? And then two angels showed up and said, hey, what are you looking at? He's gone. So in Acts chapter 1, verse 12, it says the disciples immediately returned to Jerusalem. They were about a half a mile outside of Jerusalem when they were meeting up with Jesus before he ascended into heaven. And we talked about the distance because it happened to be on the Sabbath, so forth. So tonight we're going to dive into a couple of verses. This is Acts chapter 1, and it's verses 12 through 14. I'm reading in the ERV. That's not a recreational vehicle. but it's the easy to read version. It says, then the apostles went back to Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives. That's where they were, about a half mile out when they met Jesus for the last time. It says this mountain is about a half mile from Jerusalem. We talked about that. When they entered the city, they went to the upstairs room where they were staying. These are the ones who were there. And they list them, which I'll list them to you now. Peter, John, James, Andrew, and Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, Matthew, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas, the son of James. There are 11. There was another who had Judas of Iscariot. He committed suicide. So he is not, although there were 12 disciples, there are 11 here. It says the apostles were all together. They were constantly praying with the same purpose. Some women, such as Mary, the mother of Jesus, and his brothers, were there with the apostles. What I want to focus on in these two verses is this phrase for tonight. And again, we deep dive here into this. We don't skim and scroll around here. We don't just dip our toe into the ancient text. We deep dive, folks. So don't be afraid of the water. Let's just soak in it for a minute. It says the apostles were all together. So these 11 apostles were out at the Mount of Olives. They, after Jesus left them, they went back into Jerusalem to where they were staying, where the women were also, and the brothers of Jesus were there as well. I'm sure there were more people that weren't mentioned here, but this is kind of the gist of who was there. But it does say the apostles were all together. There was unity in those who were left, the 11 of them who are listed here. The apostles were all together. If you have been around me for any length of time, you know that I am not one to promote religion. I believe Jesus came to save us from that. And in doing so, I believe that Jesus came to show us relationship with God and relationship with others. And that there is fundamentals and values that we live by and spiritual practices for each of us to individually connect with God, but also to connect collectively with each other. Just because I don't promote religion doesn't mean that I don't agree with the church, although sometimes people will jump to conclusions that if I say, hey, I'm not a religious Christian, what is that? Like some oxymoron, right? But I'm not a religious Christian. I come from a spiritual place of understanding God. I believe that religion can have a tendency to get in the way of our understanding of God and what Jesus's teachings were designed to do, which was to pull us together in loving God, and by way of him being here and taking on the sins of the world through his death, resurrection, and ascension, the power of the Holy Spirit that was within him is now accessible to all of us by the work that he did on the cross. And so I want us to have a greater understanding of who we are as spiritual beings tonight. And if you don't walk away from this from anything else, that you would see that being together as the apostles were in unity is part of how God has designed us for community. Our individual interactions with the environment and our surroundings helps to create us, to establish us. So we have the individual, which is knit in our mother's womb. And then, so we're nurtured. So we don't get to choose where we're born, who we're born to, who raises us, right? We don't get to choose many of these things. God has designed those things for us. And so our soul has been placed in these flesh vessels in order to live out a life. Some of us are in male bodies, some of us are in female bodies. And we take on these vessels as spirits with life experiences, with the gifts, with the talents, with the experiences, with the knowledge that not only that we receive from God, but also as we receive from our environments, which have been set up and designed by God for us to do. So as individuals, we're person A and person B, if you will. And so we come with our own set of background and experiences and upbringing and knowledge, culture, so on and so forth. And traumas, right? All of these things, good, bad, or indifferent. And then they take on their own nature. We then, person A, is connected in the environment with person B and C and D and E, right? So person A and person B are individuals, but they share the same environment. So they also have their own nature, but they each are their own selves, but they're also the other person's environment. So when you're building community with people, it is important about who you align yourself with. Because you have people in your environment who are watering you and nourishing you spiritually. And it is important to surround yourself with people who are watering you and nourishing you and the right seeds that are in you. So in building community, we have the responsibility to ourselves about what we take in to our bodies, our physical bodies, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental thoughts, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, how we interact with our environment on multiple levels. So these spiritual practices that Jesus has given to us helps us to be aligned with God, but also how we show up in our environment and who we allow into our environment. We're responsible for that as well, because these people who are creating our environment and sharing our environment also positively or negatively impact us. So I had an experience this week where someone became angry with me, said that they had lost patience in me, that they didn't care about my friends. And I understand that they were angry and they were reactive, but it was so toxic for me that I said, I need to step away from this for a little bit, right? It's not healthy for me. And I felt physically my chest get tight. And I've had this uneasy feeling resting in my chest. And I thought, gosh, I don't want to be in the toxicity of an environment where someone is speaking these things over me, imparting to me negative energy, right? And because this is an environment that they're creating that I am staying in and being a part of, because I'm allowing them to be in my environment. So sometimes when you allow things into your environment, they may be watering the wrong seeds of your heart. That could be with what movies or music or political rhetoric that you continue to hear over and over and over again. Your perceptions, your mental formations, the feelings that get attached to those things. It comes to a place where we have got to be unified in community with others, not because of who they are, but because of the values and fundamentals that they stand for and believe in. And I believe that not all churches are driven toward building relationship with God. There are some out there that are very self-serving, that are very money-driven, that are very politically driven, that sometimes the church is used to make a political stance versus being out there to share the good news about God and Jesus, and to allow people to come unified into a community that's going to nourish them and support them and build them up to be a family unit. I believe that there are some churches out there who are not doing that. But I don't believe that just because there are a few like that, that all of them are like that. And so I want to highlight for you in Acts 1, 12 through 14, that after the disciples, those 11 disciples left, after Jesus left them and they left the Mount of Olives, they went back to Jerusalem. They were immediately obedient to do that. But they were all unified and they were together. They were together. How are you doing in your own environment? What kind of environment are you creating for yourself? Who are you allowing into your environment? Who is speaking over you? What are they speaking over you? And is that causing you to become angry, to become reactive, to be completely out of character, right? Because of who you're allowing into the environment. Pray about your environment. Put on Christian worship music. It's easily accessible on YouTube and Spotify and Amazon and any number of iTunes, any number of places that you gather music. The radio station, it's commonplace now to be able to listen to modern worship, gospel music, hip hop, rock, gospel, Christian rock music. So find something that is appealing to you. We all are different in our own, tastes for music, but find something that's uplifting, that is Christ-centered, that focuses on God. Get that in your atmosphere, right? And then begin to create a space where there can be room for God and peace. Do something to bring around like-minded individuals, not because of who they are, but because of their values and their fundamentals, because they bring peace and love, because they speak truth, that they don't take you out of your center, they don't take you out of your peace, that they don't cause you to operate differently out of your character, out of your personality. That you can be settled in who you are, knowing whose you are. So contemplate your environment, and then don't focus so much on what you can remove, but focus more on what you or who you can add into your environment that's healthy for you, that's spiritually centered for you. And when you begin to add things and add people into your life, then you don't have time for the other things that are going on. Porn, for example, texting people from your past that you met at God-forsaken places. You don't have time and energy for those things because you're focusing on the healthiness of where you are in the moment that you're in. Not all relationships are healthy. It takes each of us to have the responsibility to look at ourselves and walk out our spiritual disciplines, as I talked about earlier, and being right-minded in that, and right and righteous before God in that. It is good for us to nourish ourselves, to nourish our bodies, our emotions, our mind, our spirit, and to get those things watered. And I believe that as we begin to spiritually mature, that manifests in the natural, and we begin to see the fruit of that before us. Help each other to water and to nourish each other. and to encourage one another along. And then take individual account over yourself, your heart, your soul, your mind, and your body, and develop a spiritual practice that keeps these core areas in line with God. Because although we are each individual souls with varying pasts and personalities, we share environment. And so make sure that you're sharing your environment in building unity and community with those who are also going to encourage you on in your spiritual walk. And until we meet again next week, may you love God and love others and love yourself as you live on purpose. Good night.